Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Farrell and Chairman Young, and all of you here this morning for the opportunity to be here. Like you said, I'm Darla Rumpho, and I'm president of the Children's Scholarship Fund. We're the largest K-8 scholarship program in New York. We serve low-income children. We're a non-sectarian organization and we've been doing this work in New York since 1999. I'm really pleased and very honored this morning to have some of the people here who have benefited from our program and can articulate, actually much better than I can, what it really means to them. I want to introduce them. Riesha Cartenia, could you just raise your hand? She is a parent of a scholarship student currently enrolled at St. Athanasius School in the Bronx. Jessica Medeo is here. She's the academic dean at the St. Athanasius School in the Bronx, and she can talk about the school-wide positive impact of the scholarships. Kimberly Walsh is here. She's currently a sophomore majoring in criminal justice at the College of St. Rose here in Albany, and she's a former CSF scholarship recipient. Sula Adam, mother of Harry Adam, a CSF scholar, currently in the 6th grade at St. Demetrios Greek American School in Astoria, Queens. And Sarah Libium, mother of 2 children who are also here with us this morning, and they've used their scholarships to attend St. Charles Borromeo School in Harlem. We're all part of the Invest in Ed Coalition. It has more than 100 organizations, from nonprofits like ours to schools, religious entities, organized labor, and any of us up here today would be are willing to answer any question you might have. I want to say that we all believe the education scholarship tax credit would be a win-win for education in New York. It would use the tax code to generate millions of dollars in new charitable donations to help not only the children we're looking at and the parents representing the children here, but it would also help public school kids. As an example, CSF, as a scholarship granting organization, we would be able to do this statewide. Right now we have a program that helps New York City, and we have a partner up in Buffalo that helps in the 8 western counties, but we would be willing, able, and ready to try to do this on a statewide basis, so there would be no part of the state that wouldn't be covered. I want to add that our scholarship families, they have the same desires for their children as affluent families who can move to a better neighborhood or afford tuition. They know, and I was just talking to one of the moms I rode up with this morning. She came here because she wanted to do better for her kids. She knows that a quality education is what's going to put them on the path to future success, and they know that there's no do-over for their child. You can take this money and put it into something else, but it's not going to help their kid. Their child's in a failing situation now. They need an option, and for many of these kids, the only way is a scholarship. There are thousands more kids like this. I don't know if I'd be allowed to give a minute of my time or like 30 seconds each to one of the parents, or no, I can't do that? Okay. Well, there are many more kids like this who, and like I said, that they can articulate better than I can why this is important, what it means for them. We hear things like this was a game changer. This was the thing that started my life on a different path. Once I got the scholarship and got into a different school, I was exposed to all kinds of different opportunities. Somebody believed in me. It's not a condemnation of any other way of doing things. It's just recognizing that these parents know what's best for their children, and the only thing that's limiting them from making that choice is that they don't have the financial resources. And this is a way, it's a small amount of money compared to the overall amount of money that's spent in the New York budget for education. It's $150 million compared to $23 billion. And it's very leveraged money. We're not about saving schools, but I know there are about 450,000 kids in private schools. I know many of them struggle, and I know that these scholarships make the difference in being able to fill empty seats in schools. The New York State budget can't afford to not have the non-government schools. So for all these reasons and so many more, and again, I want you to just look at every one of these people back here and know that this is, I'm amazed by their gratitude, and because I think I'm just a conduit for generous people that want to do something good for somebody else, and I'm blessed to do that. And I see these families, and I am reminded, like, for them, it's a huge thing. $2,500 or $3,000 scholarship, it may as well be $100,000, because that's how hard it would be for them to access the kind of money they need to go to a private school. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'll turn it over to my friend and supporter as well, Darrell Bradford.
Thank you, and Chairman Farrell, I appreciate the promotion to President from humble Executive Director. Thank you very much, sir. So I have very little to add to what Darla said and what we'd hoped our parents would have an opportunity to say too. But I do want to make three very important points about the tax credit, the proposal, or the scholarship bill, as we'd like to talk about it. The first one is really a personal one. So I grew up in the same neighborhood that Freddie Gray grew up in Southwest Baltimore. And by the grace of God, I got exactly the kind of educational opportunity that we're talking about. I got a scholarship. I went to an amazing high school. I went to 2 Ivy League schools after that. And I get to sit here today and talk about how the world should change so that more low-income kids have the same kind of opportunities I had. That is deeply personal, and we should be aligning public policy in a way that makes sure that who your parents are, the zip code you live in, or how much money they make don't determine whether or not you get a great teacher, or you get a great opportunity, or the chance to become the person you were meant to be. And this is really important. I also want to say just this bill is a revenue raiser for all kinds of schools. To what Darla said, I think it's really important. This is a suite of tax credits that help public schools with innovation, that help keep innovative programs, art and sports in schools when those things would normally be cut, that help teachers recover some money when they spend out of their own pockets, which is something that we know they do sort of serially, and that most important gives the gift of a phenomenal education to a kid who might not otherwise get one. So you should look at it as a pro-education set of proposals that include more options for families. The second thing I would say, just again to echo this is not about public school versus private school. This is about the right school versus the wrong one. There are lots of great schools of all types in New York City and in New York State, but it just so happens that the amount of money you make or the mortgage you can afford is very often the determinant of whether or not you get into the school that is the right fit for you. And this bill is meant to address that issue. And the last one, I think, is the most important thing, is that this bill is about now. Look at the discussion about education reform and policy in this state, and we have 10 or 12-year maybe promises about second graders who don't exist yet maybe being able to read on grade level by 2020. How does that help a parent who has a kid who's in the lurch today, who only has one chance at an education and one chance to become the person they were meant to be? A scholarship deals with these things in a way that no other set of education reforms actually does. So again, I'm here as a supporter of CSF, and I'm more importantly a supporter of all these parents who gave their time and effort to come up here today and make the point to you that their kids could not wait, have gotten an excellent opportunity, and we should look at a way to make that not lightning in a bottle, but something that we support and implement statewide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Questions? I just want to personally thank you for coming today to give testimony, and I especially want to thank the parents and the students and the educators who are here today. And I'm very familiar with the Bison program in Western New York and the good work that it does. I've heard from students directly about testimonials and how they've been able to excel. And so I want to thank the students, whether college or younger. It's great that you're here to learn about state government, how it works, and this is a way to show that when citizens get involved, it makes a difference. So I just want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Senator Savino has thought of a question.
Thank you. Thank you. I keep losing my mic here today. Thank you for your testimony, both of you. I'm a supporter of the Education Investment Tax Credit. We've passed it in the Senate several times now, and I've been very vocal about, the fact that I was a Catholic school girl my entire life.
Thanks for your support.
Yes, and unfortunately, Catholic schools are disappearing, as many private schools are disappearing because of the cost of tuition. Unfortunately, we don't have nuns anymore, and lay teachers like to get paid, so it's had a drain. In my community alone, in Staten Island, we've seen the closure of 6 Catholic schools in the past 3 years. And if you think that doesn't have a corresponding effect on public schools, it does. In a 2-block area where 2 schools closed, all of those students then enrolled in the nearest public school, PS 13, and the other day I addressed Chancellor Farina about that school. It's at 167% capacity right now. So we have to do something. We're not building new schools fast enough, so we need to stabilize our parochial schools. But some of the criticism of this comes from people who think that this is a tremendous giveaway to hedge fund billionaires, somehow or other, I don't know. How do you address that concern when it does come up?
Vociferously. I'd like to introduce you all to hedge fund billionaires that came up here with me today, and that would be potential beneficiaries of this tax credit. It is important to actually read the language. Though you can get a tax credit for giving up to $1 million, the tax credit is not for millionaires. Anyone can get it. And at least half of the scholarship dollars have to be given to low-income families. So $60,000, $66,000 or less for a family of four. How that is a giveaway to billionaires, I'm not really sure. I think a simple reading of the legislation kind of deals with that, but it's probably easier to demonize opportunity for families because you don't like the policy than to tell the truth about what the legislation says.
Thank you for that. I also, know that in the bill it does allow for a significant amount of the money that could come from this education investment tax credit to go to local public schools.
Indeed.
Many of whom are not able to raise enough money to provide additional programming in those schools. Would you say that that's a fair assessment of the bill?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think on the one hand, this gets districts in the game that normally would not be in the game. The fund for New York City public schools, that it's like easy money because everybody's there. But you have like lots of districts in the middle of the state that suddenly are capable of raising money for this, and so that's a good thing. And I think if you look at what we've seen in other states, so Pennsylvania has a similar program. Not only have we seen public school districts raise significant new funds for innovative programs, we've seen some great partnerships with community groups. So in Philadelphia, the Museum of African American Heritage does a cultural partnership with the district. In Pittsburgh, I believe it is, the Urban League has a college readiness program for high schoolers that is also funded by the Education Investment Tax Credit there. So this has been a good thing for public schools. So this is more money for public schools. Like a lot of people say we want more money for public schools. This is more money for public schools in addition to the other things we've discussed.
Thank you. And I think in the governor's budget, his proposal is somewhat different than the bill we passed in the Senate, which is also somewhat different than the bill that the Assembly has but hasn't passed yet. But I think in the governor's budget, he's talking about carving charter schools out of this proposal. Is that correct?
So they're all over the place. My understanding is that the definition of public school does not include charter school in all versions but the Senate version, but I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kruger has some questions.
Thank you. So following up on Senator Savino's analysis or questions, so because one of the concerns, regardless of whether or not hedge funds, if people are sitting here or not, they would intend to come to a hearing. Would you continue to support your proposal if it had a much more realistic cap on how much of a tax deduction any individual can take as opposed to this enormous up to $1 million reduction in their taxes? Most states that have looked at this model have a far, far lower rate of what a deduction can be for any given individual.
Yeah, so education policy, not tax policy, is my expertise, but I would offer this one thing on this. So Pennsylvania gives a 90% credit for what you give over 2 years, but it's on a lower amount, and every amount is capped. So there's not an unlimited, so no donor can reduce their tax liability below zero, that's the first thing. There's a cap on the total amount of credits you're gonna give out in any given year. So regardless of what the rate is, you always know what your exposure is gonna be. And the last thing I would say is that yes, you already give a charitable deduction for some donations to education, but education is the most important thing, and we believe you should incentivize those kinds of deductions at a higher level. Whether or not that's 75% or 90% is really going to be up to this body. I think what we'd like to see is anything above what it is now applied the way that the legislation would like for you to apply it.
And I would just like to add to that, it's not as if they're going to get to keep their money otherwise. They're either paying it in taxes or if they get a credit against it. So it's not like maybe I'm being simplistic, but they're out the money either way. So the fact that it's an incentive to do something good for kids that are going to, I mean, I'm passionate about the kids. I'm not passionate about the hedge fund investors at all. It's not my interest. And I know what this money could do in a child's life now, today. And I see mothers all the time. I see mothers crying. I see people really upset that they can't get their kid into a situation where they're not being bullied, they're not safe, they're not learning. So it's just, to me, that it just rings hollow.
Well, technically, the difference is now they pay taxes, and the elected officials of the state of New York determine where tax revenue should go. Here, they would decide where their money goes, not pay taxes, and get boasting rights as if they're being philanthropic, when, of course, as you just pointed out, there's no philanthropy at all.
I don't care if they get boasting rights, I guess.
But my point is, it's not philanthropy. It's simply a substitution of deciding where their tax money goes, whether they as individuals decide where it goes or where the government decides it goes. And your point, sir, about, yes, it would be capped, although, of course, each and every year the state might decide to change that formula, but it is, under the Senate proposed bill, which I always vote against, changes the charitable contribution impact for the donor from 5.7% up to 90%, and for, under the governor's proposal, 75%. So, one, we don't have that same money perhaps put into education anyway, because now the donor decides where that goes as opposed to the state education department. But two, I respect your analysis, well, what's more important than education? What would your answer be for this question? Next year, the cancer research world comes up and says, what's more important than curing cancer? How can you give this group a 90% education tax credit when we're at 5.7% in our charitable giving? Isn't curing cancer just as important? Don't you think we should have the tax deduction formula be the same for curing cancer as education? What would you answer?
Oh, I would say two things. The first thing is that I would applaud them for the guts to come here and tell you that. And the second thing I would say is cancer and education are the same thing. They are both life and death. And so the impetus for asking for you to put this program into existence is for the same thing. A child who does not get a great education dies a little bit every day, never having become the person that they were meant to be. And that is what we work on. If the cancer lobby wants to come up here next year and ask you the same thing, maybe they should. I'm sure they'll marshal their arguments in the same way. But for you, Senator, and all the other members of this august body, every year you get the opportunity to decide whether or not you think these things are more or less worthy of what percentage of tax credit. We leave that to you.
So again, for the record, your position would be if a 90% charitable contribution for this program is justified, anyone else who comes up here and says we should change the formula from 5.7% deductibility to 90% deductibility, that's okay also.
Senator, I think it's up to you to figure out whether or not it is justified. We've made a proposal as a large coalition of people who think that this rate of tax credit on a capped amount of money is a good use of the state's tax crediting authority with a substantial benefit in terms of real people and kids' education. If you don't think 90% is enough, I think it is up to you to decide whether or not it should be more or less.
So thank you again for me. It's money that isn't collected and goes to certain people in education, or money that is collected that goes to the public education system through our budgets. It's not an either or for education. It's a who gets to decide how it's spent for education. So thank you very much.
Not at all.
And thank you all for your service to the state of New York. Listening here, it's a lot of work, what you do every day, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Kink, Executive Director, Strong Economy for All Coalition.
Thank you, Chairman Farrell, Chairman Young, members of the committee. I also prepared written testimony, which I'm not going to read. I'm going to try to hit a couple high points and address some of the issues that have been discussed today and some of the issues that should be discussed by the legislature in their discussion regarding the tax and fiscal policies for this year's budget. First of all, on personal income taxes for millionaires and high net worth individuals. The Strong Economy for All Coalition worked in concert with the Fiscal Policy Institute on their Tax the 1% proposal. We've also worked with and support Chairman Farrell and the Assembly Majority's proposal for a millionaire's tax, which was released today. I would suggest for the legislature's contemplation that there is room even above the Assembly tax brackets at $1 million, $5 million, and $10 million for a bracket at perhaps $100 million a year. If our brackets for our personal income tax today are going to accurately reflect the incomes that are out there in the real world, we need some higher brackets. I included a link in my testimony to the Knight Frank Wealth Report, which outlines the prediction for ultra high net worth individuals, people with $30 million a year, $30 million or more in investable assets. There are about 175,000 of those people in the world, and their prediction is that in the year 2025, New York will be the #1 destination for those people to live and do work, based entirely on the economic prospects, the cultural prospects, the solid investment opportunities for property in New York City. Right now, we're #2 behind London. The report itself shows that those individuals do not necessarily make their residency decisions based on the marginal tax rates of cities, states, municipalities in which they reside. I've also included a link to research from Stanford University, which looked closely at this myth of the moving millionaire and demonstrates that there has not been a dancing across the state lines response to marginal increases in state tax rates over the last decade, that the modest changes we've made in New York, that the modest changes that other states have made, that the proposals like the ones included in the Assembly Majority's plan released today will not affect the residents of millionaires and billionaires. The second point I'd raise is for the prospects of multi-state action to close the carried interest loophole. The carried interest loophole is the loophole that has been attacked by Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and Jeb Bush. There's a bipartisan opposition to this loophole at the federal level. It lets hedge fund managers pay lower tax rates than teachers and truck drivers. And if we closed it at the state level, across a range of states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and California, the states that have the vast majority of carried interest profits, we could raise billions for our state. $3.7 billion in New York is a conservative estimate. Finally, to address directly the points Senator Savino raised today, I did not include it in my testimony, but I do have a report that we issued last year that goes billionaire by billionaire, looking at the existing donations to private schools, the benefits that they'd get. Elizabeth Lynham from the Citizens Budget Commission says that the private school voucher tax credit is an extremely lucrative benefit that would benefit the wealthiest taxpayers in the state. We agree with that. I'd also like to raise a brief point of concern regarding proposals to cap the property tax in New York City. I feel like that may be a similar situation where the intent is to benefit regular and working class people in New York, but the actual effect will be to benefit billionaire real estate developers. The hardest fight in the housing market in New York City right now is between land for luxury condo development and land for affordable housing development. And recent reporting has demonstrated that a property tax cap in New York City will help increase the attractiveness and decrease the costs of luxury housing development. So something that won't provide a significant benefit to working class taxpayers but may provide a significant benefit to billionaire real estate developers is the wrong direction for property tax policy in New York. Similar to the private school voucher tax credit, it purports to benefit regular people, but it looks like it's going to benefit the super wealthy. And steps like the Assembly Majority Plan, other proposals that have been raised in the legislature to close loopholes and promote fair share fiscal policy is the right direction for our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. John Whiteley, Legislative Affairs Officer, New York State Property Tax Reform Coalition.
Good morning, Chairman Farrell and co-chairman, acting chairman, Senator Kruger. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Just for the record, I'm John Whiteley, Legislative Affairs Officer of the New York State Property Tax Reform Coalition. We're a volunteer advocacy group that represents the interests of residents throughout the state who seek property tax relief and reform via state legislation. We first organized statewide in 2007. I've personally been involved in property tax issues since the early 1990s, as have many of my colleagues at local and regional levels. Our long-term objective has been and remains the gradual reduction in the continuing overdependence on the archaic and inequitable property tax as a means of funding services in our state, and to replace it with a gradual but significant increase in state funding, especially for schools, more in keeping with the state's constitutional obligations and our 21st century economic realities. The property tax hits hardest at the middle class, contributing to its decline amid a level of income inequality not seen since the eve of the Great Depression. It's the killer tax in our state, as Governor Cuomo has pointed out. While middle-class property tax relief remains important, as I'll touch on below, a tax system which does not fully consider the ability to pay and can so often put residents' home at risk is inherently inequitable in and of itself. The 700,000 moderate-income New York households paying over 10% of their incomes in property tax, with some 250,000 paying over 20%, are testimony to its flaws. When a tax is so burdensome to so many, we should reduce its use. Conceptually, the state needs to do for schools what it has done for counties through the local Medicaid freeze by eliminating or paying for state mandates that often drive local increases beyond what can reasonably be accommodated under the property tax cap. Failure to do this will inevitably strengthen efforts to weaken the cap, possibly lead to more overrides that will increase pressure on struggling taxpayers, or force unconscionable reductions in program quality at the expense of students. We support the educators' call for a significant increase in the state's share. Education cannot be flatlined, but property taxpayers are basically topped out. The cost of annual increases should gradually become a state funding responsibility. Fully implementing this concept will obviously take a while, but that doesn't excuse us from beginning now the serious discussions needed and seeking consensus on a blueprint for the future. Finally, just to touch on some brief history. It's been 8 years since an increasing property tax revolt led Governor Spitzer to launch his and later Governor Patterson's Property Tax Relief Commission, designed with much fanfare to seriously study the whole property tax problem and make recommendations. Many remember its primary recommendation of the cap, but fewer may recall it urged implementation of two other important relief measures, a circuit breaker and mandate relief, once a cap was enacted. It's now been nearly 5 years since the cap was enacted. There has been some modest but still insufficient movement on mandate relief, but basically no progress on a meaningful circuit breaker. The fiscal crisis provided a convenient excuse for a while, but the legislature's failure to enact the excellent circuit breaker proposed and highlighted by Governor Cuomo himself in the 2015-16 executive budget, while effectively adding instead to the already substantial STAR program, made it clear that its rejection was all about politics, not money. Like other relief measures, the circuit breaker doesn't provide the fundamental systemic tax reform discussed above, but as the only measure that meaningfully considers both one's income and his tax bill, it would help save the homes of the 700,000 New Yorkers noted above and countless other moderate income residents at risk of losing them while they wait out the time-consuming process of long-term reform. So the circuit breaker remains extremely important and should be enacted as soon as possible. We understand there may be a better chance for progress beginning in 2017-18. We will be watching developments closely. It's been too long already. We have submitted voluminous testimony in past years concerning the merits and the important features of a circuit breaker, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions or requests for more details. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Assemblyman Oaks to explain.
I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I'm sorry. Mr. Walter, Assemblyman Walter has joined us. Thank you.
Oh, didn't?
And Sandy also has.
Oh, yes, yes.
Danny, just a quick question. We've had these tax-free check going out, Mr. Whiteley. This year, I believe maybe in my part of the state, I'm getting a $120 check. You might be getting a little bit more because you're upstate. Do you consider that the circuit breaker? Is that, I mean, we adopted that, saying that this is first year of the circuit breaker.
No, we don't consider this a circuit breaker. The circuit breaker is a very specific concept in which you relate one's income to one's tax bill to determine what you might call the individual tax burden. And that's the basis for distributing the benefit. Not everyone will qualify. You set certain limits. The various other programs, certainly the STAR program, the so-called rebate check program, which is basically more STAR, it's the same formula, just a different mechanism. They don't do this. Some provide some broad parameters or an upper limit on income or some broad ranges within that which can affect the benefits. But it's not at all the same thing. Within those broad income ranges, everybody gets the same benefit regardless of the tax bill. So the circuit breaker is unique, and it's used in something like 35 states. It's not some new thing. We actually have it in New York, as you know, but the levels are so low that it's not meaningful. We've been trying, I think, since 2005, your first bill. And continuing, and I think you're still introducing your bill. It got wide mention by the Swazi Commission, that commission in 2008. It was the bill of choice at that time. And we're very, one of our deep regrets is that we never got that passed. We came close, but we've got to resurrect, we've got to get it back. We can't let that go because too many people depend on it, and it's the only thing that will really help them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, Senator?
Thank you. Just one question. We've talked about these issues so often. In yesterday's housing hearing, one of the groups, and I don't remember which, testified that the foreclosure rate in the Hudson Valley counties was the highest in the state, and New York State was basically the highest in the country. Do you think there is a correlation between the property tax rates in the Hudson Valley counties and our shockingly high foreclosure rates?
And what was the last part? I'm sorry.
We have shockingly high foreclosure rates
right
in the Hudson Valley counties, and I'm wondering whether you think that correlates to the high property taxes.
Well, I think it undoubtedly does because I mean the Hudson Valley is one of the is the most burdened areas of the state in terms of the income people have and the taxes on their homes. And so yes, they have high foreclosure rates. There are many, almost every area of the state, sometimes for different reasons, has huge burdens. The system can never be made equitable. I mean, in my view, the only two things you can do, you can reduce the use of it, because or you can try to round out some of the rough edges so at least it's tolerable. That's the circuit breaker. Funding reform is the long-term thing. You've got to find other alternatives to fund services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Marion Bott, Education Finance Specialist, New York State League of Women Voters, to close.
We all get to have lunch. Let's see, who's here? I'll have to rephrase my testimony. I was going to say good morning. So, do you have copies? I just want to go highlight a few quick things so that we can all go. On page 2, because there was ample discussion of the STAR program this morning, the 5-year financial plan of the executive budget reduces STAR benefits from $3.3 billion to down to 2.7 at the end of 5 years. So there's a plan in place to gradually reduce these benefits. We never have favored STAR. We wanted a property tax circuit breaker. We felt that the benefits would perhaps disproportionately go to wealthier districts. Nothing wrong with tax relief, but we believe that the property tax circuit breaker is a more appropriate tying of the burden to the income. If you go to page 3, as to the STAR program, the executive budget 5-year plan says that it will save on the city tax credit alone $87 million. That's just a timing difference. Whereas the homeowner outside of New York City credit will save $98 million. That is also a timing difference. But here's my more important question and sentence. We would have liked to have had a better explanation of the distinction between A, instances where inappropriate claims have been made, B, estimates of savings from taxpayers who elect not to apply for a state income tax credit, and I'll come back to that in a minute, and C, the impact of the cap in reducing the cost of the existing program. I did get data from DOB to the effect that the $240 million of savings in the fiscal year 17 budget comprises $185 million of tax savings, and the rest of it is from the reduction of the having no longer a 2% increase but flat tax. I would hope that you would look at what the governor really plans here and ask detailed questions as to the relative impact on homeowners, new homeowners, and renters in New York City. In New York City, many of the people who are just getting the $125 or the $62.50 if they're a single taxpayer, perhaps those people won't choose to itemize. Maybe they won't ask for the state income tax credit. So the question to you is, will the state basically end up benefiting from people in New York City disproportionately? Just ask the question. If you're a New York City representative in particular, find out whether basically overall, since the initial impact is $87 million, the percentage of impact on New York City is higher than the percentage impact of outside New York City. The new homeowner business, we're not quite so sure that there's any reason to single out new homeowners. We're much more convinced that it makes more sense to lower the $500,000. I have some data which you can review. You know this by heart, I'm sure, but on the bottom of page 3, I cite what the Institute for Tax and Economic Policy tax bracket and income levels are. So you are basically pretty much at the top of New York State. If you're making $500,000, we think it would be much more appropriate for you to ask for an analysis of what would happen to property tax relief if you pulled the income requirement down to to the 217,000 level, which represents the top of the lower 95% of income earners. So, in effect, we know that it's politically tough, especially in an election year, to ask anybody to deny anybody their tax relief. But you know that the recession will come, and eventually you'll have to look for ways of pulling in state savings, and we would strongly recommend that you continue to look at consolidation of these tax relief programs, as other people this morning have said. I have 23 seconds, so on page 5 and 6, I have 4 points objecting to the governor's executive budget proposal on the education tax credit. Number 1, private schools received generous tax treatment, $250 million of prior year claims last year. There are still plenty of prior year claims owed to New York's public schools throughout the state. They did quite well last year, the private schools. Number 2, no other state has a program allowing one individual taxpayer to direct $1 million of state funds. Number 3, the EITC first come, first served will be an administrative nightmare with poor transparency. Several people asked earlier about how will the legislature know what's going on within the Taxation and Finance Department. We realize that the details of this bill allow the donors to take their certificates, but you will not know until 18 months later, the way the bill is drawn, who the beneficiaries were. And number 4, private schools really just want to survive. So if you look at the trajectory of this program, you know that until there is parity between the expenditures for teachers and facilities in the private schools and the public schools, people will come back to you as legislators for continued funding for this program. Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions, Assembly?
Any questions? Senator.
Thank you, Marion. I always appreciate your testimony on behalf of the League.
We love bringing up the rear.
Nope. And it's good when you get to go last because you get the last word. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the governor's bill correctly. So it's up to $1 million of tax deductibility. But then credit, thank you, tax credit. But then you can receive one of these vouchers if your family income is up to $500,000?
As you know, there's a 4-part program,
right.
$10 million for the teachers and for private and public schools. And then there's the $50 million piece for direct scholarship donors, which is what we spent most of the time talking about here. $20 million piece that could, in theory, go to either a charter school or a public school. And then there's the other $50 million.
Right, I think it's $70 million.
The irony is that the income limitation of $60,000 applies to the families that can get up to, is it $3,000, something like that? No, it's $500. And the family income is limited to $60,000. Whereas for the donor program, the $50 million donor program, those families' income under the Senate proposal could be $500,000. Under the governor's proposal, income could be up to $250,000 or $300,000 if they have 5 more kids. So it's lopsided the way it's designed.
Okay, so on page 6 of your testimony, paragraph number 3, you actually say verifying the too high if at 500,000 family income limit for the voucher program.
That's a reference to the Senate program.
That's not the governor's program bill. Thank you. That was what I was getting confused about. Because yes, there are multiple bills floating around.
And still will be, I guess. Has the Assembly come out with this bill yet?
I don't know. I can't speak for these.
Is there anyone here who knows?
I don't know that they do. Yeah. To be continued.
They're busy.
They're busy.
Has the Assembly come out with its version of this bill, of the ETC bill yet?
Well, I'll have to do homework for you.
I haven't
Okay,
seen
we've been
any.
waiting for it.
All right, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you all.
That's it, Denny.
Thank you very much. That's it. We adjourn for this one, and we'll be back at 1:30.